Hello everybody, Stephen Burns here from Chromolution.com. There was a question on the Photoshop forum concerning an effective way to create fog or haze. Let me share that with you real quick. Now, I'm going to share one of my favorite ways to create fog or haze, and that is creating a brush that creates a smoke type of an effect. And of course, we can use this smoke brush for our fog or haze in many situations. So let's go ahead. I'm going to start actually painting a little bit. You see what we're getting? We're getting that nice little texturous bloom of smoke coming up out of here. And I'm using two colors, a white and black foreground and background color, to interact with each other. Here we go. We go to a little bit bigger type of an effect here. Go a little smaller. Now, if I switch the foreground and background color with the X key, of course, I'm going to get more of my steamy effect, or there we are, come a little bit more of a hazy effect. Go ahead and hit the X key, go back to more of my black. Now, I can also modify this a little bit. Let's go ahead and hit the X, go to white in the foreground, and let's set the background color to something of a light gray. I'm going to clear the canvas here, and let's see what we're going to get. So it's pretty hot there. So if I switch it to gray, there we are. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit of a subtler effect, a combination of the gray and the white blended together. Now we can even go as far as to go with a little bit of a gray on one color and a slightly darker gray for our foreground color. All right, now we can see the combinations, the blends there. So we can blend this in any type of color that we choose, just utilizing our foreground and background color. Now, to share with you what my settings are for my brushes, I'm simply using a standard brush. Let's go ahead here and target the transfer. I'm using the pen pressure, the Wacom pen, which is critical for this. And my opacity and flow is set to pen pressure for both. Now we're going to go to our color dynamics. And the color dynamics, I'm making sure that the apply per tip is targeted. Also, I'm using the foreground and background color jitter about 18%. You can play around with this if you like. If I pull this forward, let's go back and hit the D key so I have a black in the foreground and white in the background. So as I pull this over stronger, we can see the two colors are coming out much more distinct. If I go all the way to 100%, we can see it's even stronger. It's much more of a separation between your foreground and background. What I prefer to do is have a little subtler blend, and it was around 18% before, and there we are. That's a little bit more interesting in my opinion. Now, what I've done also in terms of effects here is I'm going to target the shape dynamics, and what I've done is I've modified the angle so that I'm actually playing around with the angle of the brush. As I pull this left to right, you can see the brush start to rotate right down the bottom here. Let's go ahead and bring down the size, and there we are. What you're seeing here is basically the rotating effect of each brush. And in addition, what I've done is I checked the flip on the x-axis and the y-axis. I also turned on brush projection so that as I tilt my pen, I can see it's actually tilting the shape a little bit. Okay, so I'm controlling the shape also through the tilt of the pen. I have a lot of different options here. Let's go ahead and clear that once again. Now scattering is turned on, so I can control how the smoke is actually scattering, because smoke is rotating, right? Okay, so as we've done here, we adjust the rotating, and it's, of course, smoke flips around on different axes. Smoke scatters a little bit, so I played around with the scattering, and I decided how much of a count, which is how much is being spit out at one time. I gave it about 2, but if you go further, it really gets dense here. I didn't really want it that dense. I wanted a lot more texture, so I kept it down to something around a 2. In terms of a pixel, I believe that's a pixel spread there. Now, color dynamics, once again, that's set to foreground and background color. I could use pen pressure to actually target the color that I'm going to paint with. For example, if I pull this all the way over to the left, and I decide to use pen pressure to control it, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the delete key again. Now I'm going to change the background color to something else that we can see. How about a light gray? And if I press light, I have a nice gray. If I press harder, it goes darker, harder again. So you guys get to play around with exactly how you want yours to be set. Now, I'm going to choose here not to use pen pressure, turn it off, and apply my 18% as I had it once before. Now let's go and actually apply this practically. Okay, here's an image I've been working on. It's not quite finished yet, but it will be soon. It's a very interesting composite. Now I really want to blend this together. What I've done is I'm going to turn off this overlay. I have a gradient overlay from kind of I targeted the color of the sky, which is kind of a pinkish color, to a brighter pink down here in the bottom for the foreground color or the background color. I applied that as a gradient, okay? And if I turn this to normal, you can see exactly what I've done. Now, I went ahead and give that a blend mode of multiply. What that does is it really helps start that hazy feel where the colors are integrating everything together. It's not just a separate color range between the upper portion of the composition and the lower portion of the composition. Now I take the overall color, which is going to be more of this pinkish, whitish haze, and start to throw it all over the entire image. Now, once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new layer. Now this is where my brush is going to come in. I want the brush to represent the same properties, the background properties here. So I'm going to go target my eyedropper. And I think I'm going to take the foreground color, target about that color there, kind of a little bit more of a pinkish magenta, so to speak. And I'm going to hold down the Option or the Alt key, and I'm going to come right down here and get a much brighter pink. Now that's not quite bright enough for my taste, so I'm going to come back here, target the background color, just brighten it up manually, and target OK. Now hit the B key and go back to my brush. Now once I've modified my brush, I did save it, so I can right click on it and I'll grab it right down here in the bottom. Now to save it, and for those of you who may not know, go right over here to my drop menu, new brush preset, and click OK. Alright, so it's there. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the menu. I don't need it anymore. So now let's go here and play a little bit. Hit the F key, go to full screen mode. Let's zoom in right about here. I'm working in a new layer, and I'm going to start to just paint just a little bit. Bring the brush a little bit bigger. I'm going to paint this on in here and start to create that kind of a haze back in here. Now the haze is going to come forward just a little bit. All right, we're getting it into the foreground. Here we are, but we're going to also notice it's going to be much more denser in the background, okay? Now we can also add new layers right above it if you like to. We can do this in layers, add a little bit of a thicker density, okay? Just for the background, it's coming up over the top. That seems to work. Now, let's add another layer and let's see how the lights are going to be affected by the haze. The lights are kind of a greenish color, right? So hold down the Option key, gives you the eyedropper. I'm going to target that green color. That's the color I'm going to paint with. In fact, I can grab a little pure green right about there. Now, this top layer, I'm going to give it a layer blend mode of color dodge. So, and this is one of the tricks about making haze work, because light's going to interact with it. So as I start to paint on here, see what's happening? So those lights are going to start to come alive. I bring the brush down a little bit more here. There we are. Make that a little brighter. Make it look like the lights are kind of spilling out right out here into the side. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing back over here. Give it a little bit of brighten up. Turn the lights on. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing the same thing right about here. All right. So I think you guys are getting the point here. Now we have these lights way back here. It's really back in a pinkish haze. So Option, target the color of the haze, bring the brush a little bit smaller. I'm going to zoom in for it just a little bit more. And let's start to turn those lights on, because those lights are struggling to cut through this haze back here. Okay, we're turning it on. There we are. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And like so. So I'm just going to, there we are. Now keep in mind that we can adjust. This is the light. We can adjust the opacity here, okay? We can turn them down. It's like turning the lights on and off and up and down. So, all right. So this, really should give you a little bit of an idea of a great way to apply haze here. In fact, I'm going to have a little bit more fun. I'm going to go ahead and my foreground color is pink. I have a little bit of a lighting source coming right here from this underground tunnel that I've created. And this whole image is created through a composite of photographic imagery. There we are. Brighten it up a little bit. Brighten this in here a little bit. Make it look like the light's coming through. All right. Give it a little bit more coming up through here. All right. So now you can see how it's important to kind of look at the photographic imagery in terms of how lighting will be interacting with the haze to make your image look a little bit more realistic. And once again, if I want this background to be a little bit brighter, again, I have the color dodge layer. I can also create another layer. I'm going to place it right below the color dodge because the color dodge is going to be the one that's going to really make these lights hot. And I'm going to make one layer underneath it. I may decide to choose to apply a screen to that. And what the screen does, it does the same thing as color dodge, but not to such a great extent. All right. It brightens it, but not as bad as the color dodge. And that's why I wanted to put it a little bit underneath it. Okay. All right. So don't forget, we can also come here and let's go back up here to the lights. We can come here, apply a blur or a Gaussian blur. All right. So we can soften up these effects. Okay. So you choose how you want this to look. Okay. I want to keep a little bit more of a texturous feel, but soften it just a little bit. All right, so hopefully that's helped you out there. And I know you are probably looking for some quick and easy way to create an effect with a filter effect using filters or some third-party program that'll create the fog for you. But I highly recommend you play around with the brush and start controlling how fog is going to flow in your scene. Start studying fog in real life situations. Photograph it with the camera so you can study your photographic imagery, understand how fog interacts with the landscape, how it interacts with the atmosphere as it goes further in the back in relation to how you're going to see your objects, how they're going to actually come forward from the haze as they are closer to you in the foreground. So study all of those concepts and then apply it correctly so that your imagery is going to look a lot more realistic. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that, and feel free to post comments about this video. I'm going to place this onto the Photoshop forum on the Facebook page. Just do a search for Photoshop users group on Facebook and you'll find this tutorial. And of course, I will have this tutorial on the YouTube as well. All right, so hope you enjoyed it. This is Stephen Burns, and I look forward to sharing with you again.